So I want to welcome everyone to Twin Cities Leaders. I'm your host, Kevin King, and I am here today with Dr. Sarah Rand. She is a friend and a colleague, a professor at the university, I'm sorry, at St. Catherine University in St. Paul, right? In the business administration department. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So, speaking our topic today is AI in higher education. And speaking of AI, I took the liberty of taking your bio and then putting it into Microsoft Copilot and said, give me the top 5 talking points from Sarah Rand's bio. So here's what it came up with. It said, an experienced educator and scholar, global and social impact leader, academic and practitioner, mission driven leader, and a St. Paul native, and an industry backed perspective. How about that?
Sounds great to me.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So, we're talking about today about AI and higher education. And for many of us, by the time you are hearing or watching this episode, you might already be starting your school years or rapidly approaching your school year. And I wanted to tap into how, in terms of a leader, whatever leadership role you have in higher education, whether you're a faculty member, administrator, or even a student, we know that the toothpaste is out of the tube when it comes to AI, and so it's hard to wrap your arms around it and bring it back. And so we want to discuss today and provide tips on just like what's the best and most effective ways for leaders in higher education to use this technology to our benefit. So let's first start by Sarah. Tell me, when did you first get introduced to AI?
So I have a vivid memory of this. I was on holiday with my children, and I have two boys. One is a business guy, and the other is a math engineering guy. And so my younger son was a sophomore in college. It was November of 2022. And he was hanging out on the couch and said, "Mom, you got to come over here. You're not going to be able to believe that. You're not going to believe this." And so I went over and he showed me ChatGPT, the first release. And of course, I was just blown away. I love to learn. I think most of us who are teachers get into the business because we have this love of learning. And it was just this new toy to kind of play around with. And I'm a creative, strategic thinker. So I thought, oh my gosh, like, how can I use this? And I initially went into like benchmarking different programs, seeing how St. Kate's curriculum fits in with others, what types of new programs could we create? And I was pretty amazed at what I could put together in a hurry. The one thing that was actionable right away was we have a wonderful awards presentation and dinner that we do every year in December. And I was helping out by creating an invitation, right? That
Uh-huh.
was going to go out to our students and alum and student parents, everybody across the university. And then at St. Kate's, we have this amazing leadership development program for women. It's called Katie Leadership Impact. And our signature class, Leadership and Influence, helps students to learn about leadership, to practice leadership, and also to be connected with a mentor. So, an important part of this invitation and celebration was bringing our mentors who work with our students in our leadership class. So I was
Uh-huh.
just going to do kind of a, join us this evening recognition event. And I used ChatGPT to come up with this amazing personalized invitation. So I had an invitation that went out to students, one that went to their parents, that went to our alum, one that went to our Katie Leadership Impact mentors. So it was very special. And I was able to do that, in an hour, and we
Uh-huh.
sent those out. And I was pretty amazed at how customized I could create something in so little amount of time. But how about
What
you?
year was this? Back what year was
It
this
was
when you first introduced?
November of 2022.
November 22. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yep.
I am late to the party in AI. I learned about it at an innovative technology training at the University of Minnesota last, had to been July or August, but it was really close to the school year beginning. And I remember they were showing us Microsoft Copilot. That's what I was first introduced to. And I had heard of ChatGPT and these other things, but I just never used it. But they showed me the capabilities of it. And the first thing I thought was like, wow, like holy, like it can do all these things. And so I was like, this is maybe I could use this, like, for my assignment descriptions, right? And so I sent it over to my TA, and I said, "Have you heard of this Microsoft Copilot?" He's like, "No, what is it?" And I just showed him, like, an example of it, and he texted me back, and he was like, "This is like a genius." I was like, "Yeah, I know." So, what so you used it in describe the type of ways you used it, ChatGPT.
It's been a journey, almost 3 years that I've been learning and used it in so many different ways. How about if I give you some examples of like what I'm doing this week with it?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So one of the wonderful things about being a teacher is that we do have time in the summer often to do research and
Uh-huh.
focus on our own professional development. So for me, that's learning AI and how to incorporate it into my courses and what I'm doing with scholarship and service to university. All of those things are really important to me. So I wanted to kind of do what I could to figure out how to make the most of these different technologies. So, one of the things I'm working on right now is creating a kind of a framework for guidance. I teach marketing and leadership classes, guidance for students and faculty members that are part of an industry association that I belong to. So, this is going to be thought leadership. What are marketing professors doing? What kind of AI competencies should we be teaching our students? What do we need to learn?
Mhm.
So I'm using AI to help me with that by looking at what's happening in industry. What are other associations doing in terms of identifying competencies? What are universities doing? What are hiring managers doing? And it's a lot of information and a lot of different stakeholders. So I'm
Uh-huh.
using AI to organize that and to come up with a framework. And I'm learning along the way. We could, think about all these different skills to identify, what AI proficiency means, right? But a key takeaway for me in looking at this is how critical the human skills are and things that we've thought of as soft skills like, communication, creativity, problem solving, teamwork,
Uh-huh.
ethical reasoning. All of those things are some of the most critical AI readiness, looking at AI readiness skills. So I have learned that you have to start with human strengths.
Uh-huh.
And that's where the true value of using the tools becomes. So that's one thing. I'll give you a couple other kind of more hands on practical things outside of work. So I mentioned I have two sons. One is really on the job hunt right now.
Uh-huh.
And I have been working with him to help customize his resume. We always say we work with a lot of students in the School of Business, right? Our focus is helping them to develop the skills they need to get a great job. So it's all about customization, looking at that job description and then customizing your skills to match the requirements and then really quantifying
Uh-huh.
what you're doing. So the number of customers that you work with, the volume of business and that you generate, whatever that might be. So I'm working with my son on helping him customize his resume to multiple different jobs because right now we have all of these different job sites that use algorithms to kind of select which resumes align with the responsibilities. So really helping him with that. And then just one other thing quickly. A friend of mine is in negotiations for a new job, and they're back and forth on a really, really complex offer structure. It's not just compensation, but it's bonuses and equity in the company and all sorts of things.
Uh-huh.
And one of the interesting things you can do with ChatGPT or any of the other large language models, you have Google's Gemini and Anthropic's Claude, is you can role play with it. So we were using ChatGPT and role playing so that ChatGPT was the CEO of the company that was negotiating the offer. And, what do I need to include in my counter that is going to be acceptable? And he'll be able to sell to the board in terms of the compensation structure. So there's lots of different ways that you could be using it, but I will say I use it for work and things that are happening in my personal life pretty much every day.
Mhm. That's a fascinating story, and 2 really good examples. I know for me, as I've used it over the past year, it certainly has helped me in terms of clarity. I mentioned earlier with, writing assignment descriptions for students, and that's so important, particularly as a educator is clarity of what you're looking for and how they're being evaluated and whatnot. And so it certainly has helped me in that regard, and also too, just in drafting things. You mentioned like, complex negotiations, but, even drafting like sponsorship packages or, an email that maybe you want to have a certain tone or vibe to that maybe, you just can't find the words to get it across. It's certainly been beneficial to me. I was telling one of my friends I just learned about Notebook LM and, how you can put all this information into Notebook LM and it turns into a podcast for you. So I am, I am embracing this. I admit I don't know everything about it, but I am trying to learn as much as I can. I want to talk about, you know, at work. I mean, we got this. It was an email by the Office of Information Technology that talked about AI as your partner and not your replacement. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on like how we're even um, our relationship to AI and how we are communicating about it. Our friend, your personal assistant, a partner. What do you think about like how we're using the terminology?
It's evolving. And if you think about who we are as humans, we name something, right? We identify with a name. And so this is happening. We have, these large language models. A lot of us are focusing on those as a tool to, get information from. But now we're able to customize our own assistants, or we call them custom GPTs, so we can have specific information that we want to include in the operation of whatever assistant that we have. I'll give you an example outside of my job. I have a friend who has her own custom GPT called Soul. And Soul manages her life. Like she's got everything in there with her kids and her calendar. And it really, it's him, I'll ask him.
Uh-huh.
That's how she refers to that. So I do think we're blurring this line between kind of human and technology. And we're going to hear about, human AI teams and agents. So agents are a technology, a type of tool that will not only help you get information from, ChatGPT or whatever, but then it will be able to act on it.
Uh-huh.
So if you're learning something, it could take that information and then go and actually activate it. ChatGPT just rolled out this new agent assistant that they have. It's just coming out right now. And they showed some really cool examples of, what you could do at work, but then also in your personal life. And one was like planning for a wedding and what would you wear, and if it was in a different country or that sort of thing. But then the agent would actually go out and like buy clothes for you if you wanted. So it's not just getting the information, but it's helping you do something now.
Uh-huh.
And organizations, we hear about this idea as human AI teams and AI agents, and maybe even agent bosses. So there will be agents that are managing or overseeing the other
Uh-huh.
agents. So it is I think it's changing the way we're going to be looking at organizational structures and how work gets done.
When I think about it, I think about how it kinda takes away the taboo of using it. I think initially people thought like, "Oh, I'm cheating," or like, if you're a student or you're a professional and you're like, you feel like you were doing something behind someone's back. I feel like now that terminology of friend and partner and assistant, takes that edge off you, if you will, in terms of like, hey, we know this technology is out here and that many people are using it, and it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay to use it. There's
Mhm.
some you know, unethical and ethical ways about how you go about your business. But I feel like that when I hear that terminology, it makes it sound more friendly, more easier to accept.
Mhm.
Us as professors, if students are using AI, I mean, we don't want to discourage that them not to use that technology. So that's what I think of when I think of the kind of the psychology behind it.
Yeah, I think there's very much intention around that and to try and alleviate that fear, right? Um, So it we're at an interesting point, and I think we could take it in so many different directions of, how it has impacted our work. You talked about creating assignments and helping you structure evaluations. Are there any things that you're planning on using AI in different ways this fall? We're ramping up here. Got
Yeah.
about a month left of vacation. We've talked about a couple of different things just in terms of how we can share best practices, that sort of thing. But are you thinking of ways that you're going to use it differently this fall than you did last year?
Yeah, the next progression for me is going to be like creating slide decks.
Hmm.
And like, what are some? How can I structure the slide decks more efficiently? And maybe it's using graphs, or maybe it's using QR codes, or just something beyond a text and an image, and maybe an embedded video. Which is what I've traditionally have used, and it has been effective. But I think now there's so much more that AI can assist me with in terms of engagement that I want to tap into this coming year. Definitely with feedback, and oftentimes when you're grading, you want to. I try to give as much feedback as I can, like not more than just nice job and well done, but more critical feedback to them, and maybe you even relying on AI to come up with some to make it even more impactful than what I'm saying, run it through, Microsoft Copilot and see what it spits back out at me. So those are some way assignment descriptions, still gonna do that because I think that's key. But that's kind of where I'm headed right now, at least going 6 weeks out from the semester. What about you?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I agree with everything that you said. And um, there's so much creativity that can happen. You talked about Notebook LM, that's part of Google's suite. Google is rolling out right now a very focused initiative around higher education and education. And Notebook LM is a big part of that. If you haven't used this tool, highly encourage you to go out and use it. It's super user friendly. But if you think about an LLM and going out and asking for information, you have a chat or a conversation, but once you close that, it's gone, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, one of the benefits of Notebook LM is that you can upload any type of presentation, link to a website, research report, whatever it may be, a source to your notebook. You can have as many notebooks as you want. They can all be different, and then that information is there and it stays, and you can use that to study. It will create study notes for you. It will create a briefing. It will create a podcast and audio. We talked about that. It's really interesting. That audio that summarizes what's in your notebook can be in multiple different languages. So if you have
Uh,
students who are, English is their second language and they want to listen to an overview of the content for a week, they can do that. Or if people are, more visual or audio learners, then that's incredibly helpful. And then the other great thing about it is that it's private. There isn't anything in Notebook LM that is being uploaded to the cloud or Google Gemini is training on. So it's yours. So I think a lot of teachers and students, I'm going to have my students use that in my
uh-huh.
classes.
Mhm.
So that's one. And then I worked on a paper with one of my colleagues, John Franklin, another marketing professor, on developing 4 assignments to incorporate into marketing classes. So I have an assignment looking at ethics policies. So we do a scan of corporate ethics policies. We look at government policies. What is Europe doing, the European Union doing around guidelines on using AI?
Mhm.
How is it evolving? So, for example, Google has, and I'm sure many of the other companies have as well, but they've modified their strategy around their AI ethics usage policy. I
Mhm.
would say loosen the oversight a little bit. And then there was one uh, piece of it in particular that had to do with like will not use it to do any sort of harm or that sort of thing. And I think that they modified that a little bit, thinking about the opportunities kind of in defense or military, that sort of thing that potentially
Mhm. Mhm.
could happen. So there's really an evolution of policy. Even today, it's July 23rd. So the president of the United States issued, I think it's 3 executive orders that are focused on deregulating any restrictions on AI usage. So the previous administration had put kind of some guardrails in place of how to use it, how not to use it. And
Mhm.
there's a very intentional initiative right now to make it easier for companies to use it, to try and position the United States and our businesses and economically more competitive. And I don't know the details of that yet, but we're looking at that, thinking about how is it being used and how our use is changing. So I think that's a interesting piece right now. So that's one, the ethics one. We're also doing one around prompting, how to create effective prompts to get the information that you want.
Mhm.
Another one is developing kind of a marketing campaign, marketing plan, but we call it a hybrid plan. So have the students do it on their own and then have them incorporate what they put into AI to see how that might have changed and do some critical thinking and critiquing between those. And then the fourth one is creating a custom GPT. So, for example, in marketing, we look at personas. Those are individuals who are likely to purchase our products.
Mhm.
What's their background? What are they interested in? So, how do they behave? All those kinds of things. So, you could create a custom GPT by incorporating things just focused on that persona and then ask it questions. What would you think
Mhm.
about this new product? What would you like to see? That kind of thing. So, intentionally taking some of those assignments that we created for this paper and incorporating them into 4 specific classes. And then, just one other thing I wanted to hone into, and
Mhm.
we talked about this yesterday actually in preparation for this, but just some examples of how powerful the tools can be in terms of thinking about the human side of our job as teachers. Okay. So I'll give you 2 examples, and one is related to feedback. As you mentioned, if we've got a lot of different things going on, great job or something. I think we've all done that. But to look at, here was the question or assignment, and here was the student responses. I found this helpful, especially in online asynchronous courses when you have discussion boards and lots of different students posting responses and responding to one another. But to be able to use AI to kind of give me a sense of what's behind the answer here for this student. What is their perspective? Where are they coming from? And so I use AI to help guide my feedback, not to cut and paste and say, here's the feedback.
Mhm.
But I know, we all know that one of the most important things that we can do as educators is to provide helpful feedback to our students. And a lot of us have course evaluations with that on it. Well, I used AI to provide, I think, much more comprehensive and personal customized feedback on my in my online discussions. And I've been teaching online classes for several years now, and I noticed a huge increase. And I had, we have like 1 to 5, fives across the board, 100% on provides helpful feedback, which I
Uh-huh.
thought was pretty interesting. And it didn't save me time really in doing that. I think that's something, if you ask people that are regular users of AI, there's some ways that you can create efficiency, but for things like that, it's not really saving you time. It's just taking
Mhm.
giving you an opportunity to reflect and be more intentional about what you're doing in terms of engaging with students and their work. And then, do I have time to share one more?
Go ahead. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So this was really surprising to me. Um, so our job is to provide feedback, and one of the ways that we have to do that is to grade, evaluate. And I don't know about me, but that's one of my least favorite parts of the job. And I've heard that from my colleagues. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Is grading something that you really get excited about and look forward to?
Well, luckily I had TAs,
You have
the
TAs. Yay.
the past few years, so I don't have to do it as much, but when I do it, I tend to enjoy it because I don't do it as much as I used to,
Mhm,
because I have a TA now,
mhm.
um, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it, as time consuming as it is, I don't
Mhm.
mind it.
Mhm, mhm. Well, I mean, we spend a lot of time structuring assignments and having evaluations that line up with learning outcomes, all that stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
So we want to be intentional about making sure that what we're teaching is actually going to result in an intended outcome. So I think as teachers, we're kind of trained with this mindset of you do this, then you get feedback, and then you get these, grades, and then you pass the class. Well, I had a situation where there was a significant group project, and three students were in a team, and one student did not communicate, did not contribute, and then kind of the day before the project was due, had submitted some things to the other team members and was expecting them to kind of, you probably have had a situation like this in the past. It's not too uncommon. But unfortunately, this team member who did not communicate and engage with the other team members failed the class. She just didn't contribute, and it was a big part of the class. And so I had to send an email saying, you have X number of points based on the pure feedback and based on the presentation. You're unable to get points for these different things, and it was just very methodical, right?
Mhm.
And please let me know if you have any questions. Well, I popped that into ChatGPT to say, I basically need to tell the student that the student is going to fail the class, and here's why. And can you help me um, come up with a way to do that that might be helpful for the student? And it was pretty amazing because the email assistance that I received was very much on the human side of things. I feel like my response is going to be analytical because it's about fairness and structure, right? And
Uh-huh.
communicating, making sure the student understands why this is happening. But the email that I ended up sending with ChatGPT's guidance was much more empathetic. It started with, it sounds like this is a really tough semester for you. And I'm sure that you're really disappointed in the way that things ended up. And, this wasn't your intention. And I'm sorry about that. And I also think it's helpful for you to understand that, in terms of communication and contribution, I know this has had an effect on you, but it's also had an effect on your teammates because they want to collaborate, they want to learn from you, and that didn't happen. So it also made the project less successful for them. But it was in a really empathetic way.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I also said, you know what, it's been a pleasure to have you in class. You're not going to pass the class, but I hope to see you in a future class because I know that you're going to do really well. Right.
What was the
So,
outcome? What happened?
yeah, despite that. And if
Uh,
I'll see you again in this class, she'll have
uh-huh.
to retake the class. It's a requirement, but that I know she's going to do a great job. And I'm really looking forward to seeing her in class again. So it takes away this shame. I think when that happens to a student, students get behind and they have this shame of, oh my gosh, I don't even want to show up because I feel like I haven't been as successful as I want to be. So really providing empathy, understanding,
Uh-huh.
and then
Uh-huh.
ensuring that they're going to be successful in the future. And you're excited to have them in class. It's
Uh-huh.
not like, oh my gosh, I failed this class. Now I have to go back again. Well, anyway, this student, after receiving that message, actually wrote an email to the other two team members, essentially apologizing for not contributing in the way that she should have and the impact that that had on the team. And she didn't copy me. I had no idea. that she did that. And I highly doubt she would have done that if I hadn't sent that email that was really empathetic and kind of
Mhm.
provided the perspective of her colleagues on the team. And the only way that I knew she did that is because one of the team members sent it to me and said, Sarah, I was really surprised to get this from the student, but I really appreciated it because she acknowledged that, there were some challenges on our side because of the way that it worked out. And so it wasn't about, wanting to get visibility, about her doing that because it would affect her relationship with me. It was very much just her intention behind it. And so that had a huge impact on the other team members as well.
Mhm. We're talking to Dr. Sarah Rand, so, who is a marketing professor at St. Catherine University. Now, I want to get on Sarah too, because there's probably listeners here saying, "Okay, look, this is all great, and
Mhm.
we've
Yeah.
made a really good case for why we should be using this technology." But people are afraid of change, right? And every particularly in higher education, education in general, you have teachers who are Gen Z or millennials and Gen X and baby boomers, and everyone may not be as technically advanced. Um, what do you say to those people?
So I have my little, we talked about going into, so what should we do, right? We kind of talked about how we play around with this. I've got my to-do list here.
Yeah.
So I will just kind of walk through it. So um, these are my recommendations. Number one, recognize that we have a big sense of urgency here. And the interesting thing is that the people who are using AI the most are the people that are the most concerned about their lack of knowledge and the pace at which their knowledge is going to be outdated.
Let
So
me let me just stop you there because I want to bring because you talked about urgency, and
yes,
so I just want to bring up this Harvard Business Review article that
yeah,
talked about how AI data could personalize higher education. It says that um, industries like healthcare, banking, and retail are rapidly integrating AI to improve operations, while higher education has been slow to adapt. And a couple of reasons have been resistance to change and the lack of training faculty. You talked about a sense of urgency, and I tend to think that's why you mentioned that it's a sense of urgency because typically in higher education, we don't move as rapidly as industry does.
yeah, 100%. And there's a lot of data that affirms what you just said. I've looked at several different studies recently, and less than 10% of faculty report adequate training and support. There's a lot of issues around academic integrity and concerns in terms of like having formal policies. Lagging almost 80% of academic higher ed institutions lack any formal type of AI policy. 80% of faculty are unclear about what they should be doing. And I feel like people are kind of operating in isolation. You've got these people that are just doing this on their own, they're getting ahead, but there isn't sharing, there isn't training, there isn't any structure around it. And so that to me is a big part of that sense of urgency as well. One of my favorite lines, and I saw this on like a poster at one of my kids' hockey camps, but it was some people make things happen, but let's shift this to organizations. Some organizations make things happen, some organizations watch what happened, and some organizations wonder what happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So where
Yep.
are we? Right now, I think Ugh, most of higher ed is in a watching mode. And
Yeah.
the sense of urgency is encouraging people not to get to the wonder what happened because there's going to be huge transformation and displacement. And I don't think we know, there's
Mhm.
discomfort about what that's going to look like. But even the people who are digging in, and personally, I found that. The more that I'm learning, the less I know.
Yeah.
So there is that sense of urgency. And what do you do about it? First of all, you have to find the people who I think, find the people who are excited about this in your organization and engage them, right? Because it's not just about administration or a few faculty members, it's faculty, staff, administration, getting people together to look at use cases. How are you using this? I would say one of my sons works for a very large company in New York City, and he created a custom GPT for managing his work. He has a lot of touch points with, he's in marketing, but it's, IT, graphic design, pricing, all these
Uh-huh.
different areas. And there's a lot of procedures. So he put together this custom GPT to help create efficiency and increase communication in his area. And he said to me, goes, Mom, I showed this to my boss, and it was like showing fire to a caveman.
Uh-huh.
That was
Uh-huh.
how he explained it. And a week later, his boss's boss taps him to be part of this AI implementation team across the organization, which is a, national, international company, actually. So it's those people that are digging in and using it are the ones that, whether you're in higher ed or, in
Uh-huh.
industry, you want to find those people.
I think one
And
of the key I just wanna mention jump in real quick. I think one of the
yeah,
key things, because I wanna highlight what you just said about sharing of information, and I'll use myself as an example. Again, I didn't get introduced to AI until a year ago, right? That information was shared through, our information technology department, and now I share, we talked about, Notebook LM, like, that was a sharing of information. Everyone that I talked to now, or most people I talk to now, hey, have you heard about this? Did you know this capability? Did you know you can turn this into a podcast and all these things? And I think that's the exciting part. Like, if you are of someone who maybe isn't technologically savvy, if it's being introduced to you by a friend or a colleague and they can show you like, hey, this is how it works, or like this is what it's capable of, and you don't have to use it, to its fullest capabilities. Like, you could start it out like, hey, I'm just gonna write an email and use, one of these platforms, and
Mhm.
start small, and then gradually, as you learn more about it, you can implement into spaces that are more irrelevant to you. That's what I think. That's what I take away when you say, I think that's an important part to highlight, is to the sharing of information.
Absolutely. And to recognize you don't need to be a computer science expert to use these tools. With the example of my son, he doesn't have a background in technology at all. He just showed that he had an interest. And if you look at what LinkedIn and others are saying about the top skills that, students and employees need, they need to have adaptability, a
Uh-huh.
desire to learn and to adapt. That is the most important skill right now. So I completely agree. It's not about building up this, you know, um, significant tech proficiency, but thinking about the
Yeah.
use cases. How can I use this? And it's really critical to meet people where they are. We talked
Mhm.
about this idea of anxiety, and people are looking at their purpose. So there is a psychological component here. We have our own mental story of our value, right? And we can say we have these new AI assistants or partners or whatever that might be, but how does that affect my role and my purpose and my
Mhm.
ability to contribute? And that is going to be a conversation that we need to continue to have alongside of how is this exciting tool going to make my job more efficient or make me more productive?
I think as we evolve in this, change is inevitable, right? And again, some people are reluctant to change, and they are comfortable in how they have taught, for years, and they're comfortable in how they've run their classrooms or how they have led in these different spaces in higher education. And you know, I'm here to say, like, we have to change, or you to your point, you're gonna be asking what happened, you know, it's not even 2 years from now, it's in 6 months, in 3 months. And I know change is difficult for people, and it's the fear of the unknown, right? That's why most people don't like change is because they don't know what's next or how it's gonna impact them or if it's going to replace their job or whatever the case may be. But I feel like and those emotions and feelings are valid, 100%. Um, but I also think, we need to continue to look at, like, how can this technology be beneficial for me? I think if you're in a generation, a Gen X, or maybe even a millennial generation, definitely a baby boomer, you've been on both sides of technology, and so you've kinda learned how to navigate both, even though you might be behind in the technology part. Um, but I would say to people who are hesitant and who are fearful of this change is to um, digest it in small bites. Do not try because it can become overwhelming, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And, you have to meet people where they are. You have to engage people in the conversation. You have to recognize that people are going to be in different places. I'm in a different place teaching a marketing class from someone in our English department teaching a creative writing class, right? So thinking about use policies, right? How do you use it? How often do you use it? What do you use it for? To what extent do you disclose how you've used it? But really having conversations about that and at least giving um, faculty, some guidance on how to do that, creating some structure. I think
I think
also incentives, right?
for sure.
Um,
Yep.
because we're busy. So grants or other incentives for faculty to take advantage of professional development, conferences, training, whatever that may be. That's important because we are experts in our field. And the reality right now is we're learning as our students are learning, right? And so
Yes.
we need to really encourage our colleagues, all of us, to be able to have opportunities to do that and to place a value on it, to recognize and support our colleagues who do want to do that.
Briefly, I know when you mentioned earlier about how I plan to use it this year, I forgot to mention that I am going to use it to help create or refine a end of semester group project.
Nice.
And I feel like, that's going to help me, um, a lot, in terms of when you're coming up with these group projects and learning outcomes and group papers and presentations and, you wanna at least for me, like, I always want, these projects to be applicable to the student that they can take this experience into an interview and say, I was able to do this. These were the outcomes. This is what I learned. These were the group dynamics, and they can really, it can live beyond just the last day of a 20-minute presentation in December. And so, definitely plan on spending some time in August, refining my final group projects.
Yeah, and you can have so much creativity now. I've used it to create like debate topics for students. One of the things I'm going to be doing this week, I mentioned our leadership development program at St. Kate's. We took a group of 20 students to Denmark and Sweden to study women's leadership there in
Mhm.
May, and I am going to take the data. We got some data from them on their experience, right? We had them fill out a survey and give us some qualitative and quantitative data, but I'm going to take that data and going to use my AI assistant and provide kind of a framework of a grant proposal, right? So I'm going to look at what different foundations are interested in supporting women's leadership and international learning. And then I'm going to take the findings and build out a grant proposal. And, that would take a long, long time to be able to do. But I think if I spend a day on this, I'm going to have a really nice template for a grant proposal. And then I can
Mhm.
customize it to, I already did, there's like a dozen foundations that could potentially be interested in this. So I can take that and customize it and pretty much have a grant proposal close to being finished. And then I will, collaborate with our grants office and they will add, this is that human component, make it so much better
Yeah,
than
for
what
sure.
it is. And yeah, that will just have a great impact on our students and ability to travel because we funded that trip through grant money.
Sarah, I want to get you out of here on this, and I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and I hope that those of you who are listening or watching that you have some key takeaways that you can take into the school year, whether you're a classroom or whether you're an educator, you're an administrator, you're a student. Keep the conversation going. I'd love to hear what you all are thinking out there, and how are you using or plan to use. Um, this technology of AI in your classrooms, whether you're in higher education or K through 12. I definitely want to hear about that in the comments. This segment is sponsored by Kowalski's Markets, where it's all about the joy of good food. Sir, I want to get you out of here on this. Is a question I'm going to ask every guest this season. Is what is a Twin Cities hidden gem, place, event, or experience that people should know about?
All right. So I live in the Uptown area, and I always want to encourage people coming to Uptown because we've had a lot of struggles with businesses here. I would have said Isles Bun and Coffee on 20th and Hennepin was a hidden gem, but they were written up as having the best cinnamon buns like in the country or the world or something. And now there's like a huge line there all the time. So you might know about Isles Bun and Coffee. If you haven't been there, highly recommend that. There's another local business on Hennepin Avenue. It's called the Troubadour Wine Bar. It's a local business. They have a selection of organic wine and snacks and beer, and they have live music almost every night. It's a great place. It's on 26th and 28th and Hennepin too. It's like right over by. You can go get a cinnamon bun and then go listen to some music. No, it doesn't open until like 5 p.m. But yeah, it's a neat little place, and I certainly hope that the businesses in Uptown are able to survive despite the major road construction and everything else going on over here.
For sure. Well, I didn't do this at the beginning of our conversation, but I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to end this with a round of applause for Sarah. I enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate your time and coming on to Twin Cities Leaders, and hope you have a great school year. I know we'll be in touch. I know this won't be the last time I talk to you in a while, but thank you guys for listening to this episode of Twin Cities Leaders, and I'll see you next week. You can always find me and Twin Cities Leaders on Instagram at Twin Cities Leaders, and also too you can listen on Spotify and watch on YouTube. So I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. See you
Thanks so
later.
much, Kevin. Thank you.